Good, what are we on? Afternoon, good afternoon, evening, good afternoon, guys. Thank you for joining me. So, what's been happening on the World War III war front? Well, guys, we're still here and it's a Friday, so, today's a good day. So, we've kind of got, at the moment, in the east of Ukraine, we've got a kind of a Cold War type standoff situation brewing. So, weapons are now being, people are talking about using NATO weapons to strike targets inside of Russia. Now, why is this happening? What's the reasoning behind this? What's the significance? Well, first of all, they're in a war. So my first reaction, I was a bit shocked that that there were restrictions on these weapons anyway. If you give someone a weapon, you shouldn't be able to say, oh, you can fire it at this target or this target. And I didn't even know this was a thing. But, it is a thing. There's restrictions on where the Ukrainians can fire NATO weapons. So what's the reasoning for wanting to strike in Russia now? Well, it's all centering around Kharkiv. So, and again, these guys are in a war, so that's kind of the main reason. But you've got to understand the geography of Ukraine and where Kharkiv is. There's mass troops building up now in Kharkiv. And if you're fighting a war, just over the border of this conflict, you've got enemy airfields. So you've got aircraft setting off from airfields 20-30 kilometres away, coming over, bombing your towns. Helicopters, all that sort of stuff, all the air assets that they've got in bases near to the border. If there's missile launch pads and artillery systems placed just over the border where they know that they're not allowed to be struck, that's kind of a big advantage for the aggressive side, the occupying side. Fuel, logistics, troop build-ups, all these things are, in a war, they're of course legitimate targets. But the problem Ukraine has been faced with is it cannot strike these targets while they're on the Russian border. Now, everybody's saying that, especially the Fellowship. Remember, we talked about the Fellowship. What is it? You guys know. If you've been watching my videos, you know who the Fellowship is. It's basically, the countries who are tiptoeing forwards with these, pushing these red lines, over and over again. But basically, all the countries in the Fellowship, so let's go, I'll do it once, guys, okay? Germany, Poland, France, and then the Baltic states, Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. These guys are all kind of in agreement now that, NATO weapons from their particular countries should be used in Ukraine. But of course, there's varying layers of diplomacy, but it's on the outside, it seems like all these countries are in agreement and they're saying it should be a thing. So what you've got to think about these countries, and again, what I think is key, is the proximity and significance of their proximity. So all these countries, barring France, are kind of in the, are in the immediate crosshairs of Russia. So let's take Poland, for example. Whatever happens to Ukraine, if the Russians push through, Poland is kind of going to be the next country. Now, there's arguments, will Russia attack Poland? Will he not attack Russia? I don't want to get into that now, although I could. What I will say is Poland, it's their perception, it's their belief that they will be next. So Poland saying we should let the Ukrainians strike targets inside Russia, it's kind of, it's a big canary in the coal room. It's a big canary in the coal mine, because Poland normally would be wanting to calm things down because they don't want a Russian invasion. But if they're seeing things on the ground, if their intelligence is built up in such a manner that's saying, right, guys, the Russians could break through any time now, and if they do, they're going to be at our door, then that kind of gives them an incentive then to let the Ukrainians use these weapons and strike targets within Russia. And what we've seen, we've seen this with remember the long-range weapon systems, the HIMARS. Remember, the F-16s, that's another big one. All these parts of military aid, what you'll see is one country step up and they'll just tiptoe forwards. And I think it's going to be France on this occasion. France are just going to tiptoe tiptoe forwards, 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 forwards. And they're going to be seeing how competent the Russians are at responding to this. You know, the Russians, right? Are the Russians going to carpet bomb France? What are the Russians going to do? And then once France has opened that, you know, bridged that gap of using French weapons to strike Ukrainian targets, whether it be put French troops on the ground in Ukraine, whatever it is, once the French have done that, they'll take a back seat then. They'll back off and then the other countries can do it then, because that precedence has opened. So then you'll see the other countries in the fellowship. One of them will step up next. It may be the Germans. It may, you know what I mean? And then the next move, they'll move forwards and test the water, because then, you know, it's not, all right, okay, it was the France who put the first troops on the ground. Right, okay. So France are the main bad guys. Right, okay. Right, now it's the Polish. The Polish are the first ones to send the missiles over. Right, you see what I mean, guys? It's kind of like mitigating that threat rather than one country being bullish and moving forwards. But that's kind of the state we are in at the moment. So it's been all over the news then. Again, Joe Biden, America, they have said that they will allow US weapons to strike targets inside Russia. Yes, that's true, but it kind of it's kind of overstating what they're actually doing. The American weapon systems, they have a limit to how far to the front line they can go, so they have to stay well back. So that limits their range straight away. And now what the US have said is that they will only allow strikes to protect Kharkiv, so things that are in the immediate vicinity of Kharkiv. Now, how this progresses, what we're going to have for mission creep, how that's going to move forwards, I don't know. But what's really key at the moment is the response from Moscow, and I'll put the link in the description to these articles, guys, of course. So Moscow have come out and they've said, you know, they're warning that we could go to war over this decision. You know, this could be the final red line that, you know, that NATO, the West has overstepped. And this could, you know, be the final, it's not straw that broke the donkey's back, but you know where I'm going, guys, okay? This could be the final step. Dmitry Medvedev, who is kind of a hardline, he's a hardline, you know, he's a hardline Russian commentator. He's a politician. Is he competent? Does he have much say in the day-to-day running of Russia? Not really, but you know, it's out there, and he's saying these things, and he's being very vocal, and he's saying that, you know, Russia should use, as a show of force, they should use a tactical nuclear weapon to let the West see, hey, you know what, guys, we can actually use tactical nuclear weapons now on the battlefield, and we can strike any target with this and just, you know, decimate it. Because that's the reality of what a tactical nuclear weapon would do. Any unit, missile structure, you know, there's not really much that can defend against a low-yield tactical nuclear weapon. So what you've got brewing at the moment right now, and it's interesting that it's Friday because these things always happen on a Friday. What you've got is kind of like a Cuban missile type crisis where, you know, you've got the one side who are saying, right, we're gonna do this, and then the other side saying, well, if you do that, we're gonna fire nuclear weapons. So I don't want to say it's Cuban Missile Crisis light, because it's not. What I want to say is, what we need to understand is we need to look back through history. Vladimir Putin was a young boy when the Cuban Missile Crisis happened. Now, it doesn't really matter how the West portray this and how it's written in textbooks now. The reality is, on the ground, on the day, Russia lost face in the Cuban Missile Crisis. They did what all Russians always do. They bang their chests, they pretend they've got lots of competency, they pretend they're a lot stronger than they are. When they get called out, you know, they fail. Now, this is what we actually run the risk of now, because Vladimir Putin saw that as a young boy, and he was at an impressionable age when he saw that. You've got to, this is what, you know, people don't understand history, so they're trying to look at these conflicts with Western eyes without understanding the backgrounds to people, kind of like people's backstories or like origin stories. So Vladimir Putin's origin story is, he had to witness the Cuban Missile Crisis and the fall of the Soviet Union when he was at a very, very impressionable age. Now, he's grown up through the ranks, and you can look, you know, there's plenty of documentaries out there about how he came up through the ranks. But basically, you know, my opinion, if somebody was to ask me my professional opinion, I don't think Putin will back down like Khrushchev did. Remember, Khrushchev was hailed as, you know, the savior of the world, and, you know, he hailed in peace. But the reality is, in Russia, especially Putin, as he was watching that, he saw that as a disgrace. He saw that as a loss. So that's what's happening on the ground, guys, all right? That's what's happening right now, okay? So when is this going to happen? When are these nuclear weapons going to be fired? When are people going to start firing into Ukraine? At this point, guys, anyone's guess is as good as mine. But what I will say is the key things here. When are the F-16s? When are they going to start to be used? Are they going to use them in conjunction? Is there going to be, you know, a mass attack on these forces in, you know, that are amassing just above Kharkiv? Are they going to use the F-16s in conjunction with the Polish F-16s? Remember, these waters now of Poland wanting to fly defensive sorties over Ukraine and Ukraine flying the same aircraft for offensive reasons, we're starting to murky this water on whose F-16 is that, whose F-16 is that, what are they doing, what payload did they drop. So all these waters are getting murkied. So the F-16s, when they start flying them, that's going to be key. It could be a coordinated attack on Russian mainland. Also, it's really interesting right now in the UK. We have no politicians. Basically, all Parliament's been disbanded, and everybody's out, you know, posting letters through letterboxes. You know, UK politicians are talking about potholes. They're talking about emptying bins, NHS waiting lists. You know, and all these things are good, and all these things are right and proper, and we need to deal with them. But we should be dealing with the Russian threat first. Anyway, that's just me speculating. So this could literally, guys, okay, I think the new escalation could be, and it'd make perfect sense for this to happen before the UK election, because there's no UK politicians at the moment. And then you've got the argument that who's anybody to give these decisions? You know, nobody's elected at the moment in the UK. So we're in kind of a state of purgatory. Politically in the UK. Not that it really matters. So why now then? Well, why is all this stuff happening now? So at the moment, you've got this, you know, the Russians are amassing a force north of Kharkiv. And, you know, from my sources on the ground, you know, they're saying that any day this force could come down. And if you've got to look at the, you know, the timings of these things as well. You know, the Russians are going to want to plan a summer offensive. When the ground is hard, they can move their tanks. You know, it's a lot easier to move around, because when the colder months come, everything just slows down. Everything slows down to an absolute grind. People are cold. They're not wanting to leave the tents. They're not wanting to leave the sleeping bags. Nobody wants to do anything when it's cold, but, you know, it's really warm in Ukraine at this time of year. People will have more flexibility. They'll be able to move better. The machines will work better, and everything's easier in the summer. So they're looking at this, this summer offensive potentially coming down into Sumy. I've done lots of videos on that, guys. I've told you how vulnerable Sumy is. You've got Kharkiv, which is really vulnerable, and if the Russians do push, and remember, I've said it from day one, week one, the Russians, in fact, you guys for that way, the Russians are trying to do a pincer movement around Kharkiv. So they'll take this northern corridor with the border, then they'll start pushing from the south. I think if they push from the south, they're going to move up to the Oskil Reservoir, but, you know, guys, that's a different story. So if they do this, and there's a significant gains in the east of Ukraine, then France has already committed itself to sending troops into Ukraine. So by France, you know, the fellowship, by them allowing the Ukrainians to strike targets in Russia, that may slow this down. Equally, it could have the totally opposite effect, and the Russians could just say, right, push now, send everything, we're not backing down. I don't know what's going to happen. You don't. Nobody knows what's going to happen, guys, okay? Because this is war, okay? Each team, each army, they're trying to destroy each other, and no plan survives first contact. What we can say, though, is we have got a missile crisis brewing. You know, it's like Cuban Missile Crisis 2. In fact, guys, you know what? It's a Kharkiv missile crisis. And that's what we've got now. We should put that on another t-shirt. We have got the Kharkiv missile crisis, and I think it's going to be played out very, very soon. Remember, this could be the beginning of the normalization of low-yield tactical nuclear weapons and how they're used on the battlefield, and that is just going to change everything, you know, within warfare. Because I feel once we start using these low-yield tactical nuclear weapons, it'll just be normalized. It'll be the new thing. Nobody will be talking about it anymore. It'll just be, oh yeah, another one's being used, another one's being used. And you could argue that these things, if this happens, this is worse than a full-scale nuclear exchange. Why? Because the normalization of it would mean that everybody's just going to start using them. So rather than, you know, a battalion of fighters getting attacked by a missile attack, you know, worst case scenario, it's going to take out, what, 10-15% of their troops. One strike from a tactical nuclear weapon, everything's gone. All those people are gone. They're not coming back. So then the other side, they use a similar system. And guys, this is escalation, and this is where we're at the moment. And the normalizing of it would mean they could move through Poland. You know, they could move very fast using these weapon systems because they're really, really powerful. They're really dangerous, and we need to try and avoid that at all costs. Guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Am I wrong? What do you think? I know some of you guys are, you know, say that the, you know, the normalization of tactical nuclear weapons won't be used, you know, won't be observed. Will it? I think it will. I'm happy for your, you know, I'm happy to listen to you guys. And also, you know, make sure you've got some stuff ready, guys. Okay, I don't want to turn this into a prepping channel, but all the supermarkets and all the stores in the UK, we're now seeing food shortages. Can you imagine how there will be a run on the shops if, like Medvedev says, they use a low-yield nuclear weapon? Guys, it will change everything. Let me know what you think in the comments, guys, and I'll speak to you later.